Hey guys, how's it going? It's your boy M.K.S here, back in another video. Obviously this is part of, I suppose you could say, the case for Celtic being tax exempt or at least paying the least amount of taxes possible. For once I'm awake early, so I'll probably go back to sleep knowing me, but I couldn't sleep for a while, so I kept overthinking, so I thought I might as well wake up and make a while. Hopefully everyone else is still asleep, so I get enough peace and quiet to make a video. But yeah, it's 5 in the morning here in the UK, so knowing me, unfortunately, I'll probably go back to sleep. But yeah, I wish to God that I would need as little sleep as possible. But I'll probably get a lot more done. Anyway, I'm going to crack on with my continuation of my list. So please check out part 1 if you haven't already done so. In that, I covered part ideas number 1 to 10. So this is going to be number 11 to 20. So I'll try not to waffle too much. So another thing, for once I'm drinking water instead of tea, but I have boiled the kettle, so I'm going to drink a little bit of water as well, as it's a bit healthier, so hopefully help me to lose weight. So anyway, a long time ago I didn't drink water because I was a bit rebellious, or I can be a bit rebellious, so the more people told me to drink water, the less I do it. But since I've had a few sort of minor health problems and put on a bit of weight, I decided to have more water, and especially for the future, perhaps. Anyway, I'm going to crack on. So sorry if I'm waffling. So number 11, I was thinking about the contribution that Celtic have made to the local and regional, as well as national economy in Scotland, and this makes me think that Plaid Cymru, the SNP, and possibly other Celtic parties like Sinn Féin or others, as I mentioned in part 1, I think should support Celtic to pay the lowest possible taxes. I often mention obviously legally, because I think obviously that's an important point. But yeah, so I think it'd be great if, I'd say, Plaid Cymru, how you pronounce them, maybe even Sinn Féin, and certainly the SNP, and possibly local political parties should help Celtic to be tax exempt, because that money can then be the money Celtic generates and the money the club can save could be regenerated into the economy through like what it does for tourism and what it does as a pillar for the local Glaswegian economy, especially, but also the Scottish economy generally. Number 12, I think that'd be great if companies, and as I say, Plaid Cymru, maybe possibly even Sinn Féin and other Celtic / Gaelic political parties. I don't know really much about the difference between Celtic and Gaelic. I think they're sort of connected, but yeah, I think especially Celtic political parties should surely get behind Celtic to legally pay the least amount of taxes possible and maybe get government funding, as I mentioned in part 1, and so-called lottery funding and things like that, as much funding as possible, especially as it represents like Celts and that sort of thing. So especially with its Irish and Scottish connection. But yeah, the 8 Celtic countries, as I would call them, given my alliterations. I think that most people call them Celtic nations. Whoever mentions Celtic normally, or Celtic, but I call them Celtic countries because of my alliterations normally. But yeah, so I think it'd be great if companies, as well as political parties, supported Celtic as much as possible and invested in the club. And yeah, if Celtic was tax exempt, then maybe it could encourage more international investment, which would benefit Scotland and Glasgow in particular. And I think, as I mentioned in point number 11, if and when Celtic pay taxes, normally it goes to the British government, which a lot of that money could be spent in other parts of the UK, which doesn't really reach Scotland as much. But if they got to keep the tax money and reinvest it in the local community, it would actually benefit Glasgow and Scotland more generally, so more specifically as well. And I think that that should hopefully encourage, especially the SNP, to support Celtic to have the lowest possible taxes, again legally. Number 13, I know I mentioned this in part 1, and it's something I thought it would only be fair to mention and I know this could be, some people might say it should be an argument the other way around, but unfortunately it's a very embarrassing part of Celtic's history, and I hope the club will learn a lot from it. But I think it would be unfair to not cover this point about historical abuse that happened as part of the club, like the boys' club, as it's called or was called, and so these historic abuses, I think a lot must be learned from them, from those cases, and I think I think you might say there's it's counter to my argument, because obviously some people would say that they shouldn't be rewarded for this sort of thing, obviously, but I think that with the historical abuse case, it's important for the victims to be paid and put first, and make sure that they get the support, whatever support most victims of abuse get, and also which I hope I'm making a coherent point here, but yeah, which but I thought it would be only fair to cover that point. But yeah, so also learn from it, but also to give them whatever support they need, and pretty much of whatever they ask for. Obviously not literally whatever they ask for, but whatever financial or other such compensation. I know money isn't everything, as some people probably say. Some people might think it is, but most of my money I would give away personally. But I hope I make sense. But yeah, so I think it would be interesting if also I probably should have covered this point first, but of this point. But I think it'd be interesting if, like, Catholic churches or the Vatican, even though I'm not Catholic myself, I think it would be interesting if they invested in Celtic and supported them to pay off their debts, financial debts, including these sorts of cases, and especially as Rangers normally sing or say a lot of anti-Catholic things and sort of hate on Catholics. So I think people from Ireland as well, because they have an anti-Irish and stroke Catholic sort of take. I think people from Ireland and Catholics should support Celtic, and help them to pay off these debts. But I think it is important that victims of crime are paid. And on that point, number 14, on that note, I also think that Celtic should learn lessons from those sort of things and look to solve problems, and also ensure that they are within the law and work with, like, governments and politicians, and especially local politicians in Scotland and across the UK, and also in Ireland perhaps even, and to look at how to ensure that like they solve problems, like first of all, learning their lessons from any things that has happened at the club that was negative in the past, but also looking at how to ensure that children are safe in the future, and also things like animal rights and children's rights and things like that. I think it would be good for the club to support those sorts of things, and I think financially having the support to do that would be great. So I hope that made sense. Number 15, again, I hope in return for, like, working with local politicians across, especially in Glasgow itself and across Scotland, to solve problems, and working with them to ensure that Celtic does the best to stick within the law, discourage any illegal activity amongst fans, ensure that when fans travel either in Scotland or even overseas in, like, European games, that the fans are well behaved and things like that. So I think in return for doing those sorts of things, I think it'd be great to have tax exemptions. And I know, as I say, Celtic are not perfect, as I mentioned, obviously, but I think our rivals, like Rangers, our main rivals especially, have a lot of a hooliganism and racism problem. But yeah, I'd love to see Celtic, like, always obeying the law, and especially as a club, like, obviously you can't control all the fans and ensure that they always obey the law. But I think if the club talks about ensuring that all the fans, that they encourage the fans at least, and the club itself, and it stands for obeying the law, then I think it'd be great to see tax exemptions or state funding and aid, and again lottery funding and things like that. Number 16. I hope to hear other people's points and opinions about. Obviously, I'm a bit biased as a fan, in spite of some of the more negative stuff, which I must admit did make me wonder whether I should be a fan of Celtic. But I think because of Rangers being, like, very imperialistic and having a lot of racism and hooliganism, there are things that Celtic as a club has done, or certainly some section of the club have done that I disagree with. But can't remember my point, sorry, but yeah, I still decided to be a Celtic fan in the end, despite the negatives and all that, which every club probably has. Number 17. Again, I hope that if new sponsors and owners, co-owners, shareholders, or whatever, come in to invest in Celtic, hopefully they will look at ways to. Keyword I often mention, as I keep mentioning, is legally look at ways to pay the lowest amount of tax that we can pay legally. I suppose I look at a lot of waste in the government of how it uses taxes in a wasteful way, and I think it would be good to see Celtic using it in a positive way, like to do the charitable work it does overseas as well as in Scotland itself, and again, as I mentioned in part one, in a deprived area, like looking at ways they can build football academies and things like that, and help health and cut crime and other things which would benefit the community in a very positive way. I hope. Number 18, again, for a lot of the good things that the club's done in terms of charity and how it was set up as a charity for deprived people. I mentioned like reparations for the Irish community, which could go to Celtic in Scotland for all the things they went through in the past in the UK. Both in terms of what the UK did to Ireland in the past, and also in terms of what happened when Irish people emigrated to UK, especially in Scotland, the discriminations they faced, which were probably the worst, happened in Scotland. So I hope that made sense. Again, number 19, I think it'd be great also if Celtic does a lot, once again, as it has done in the past. In the future, I hope to talk about my more general dreams for the club, and more updated dreams, including some of the causes I think the club should stand for, and some of the things I think the club should stand for, and the causes I think it should support, like Africans in STEM, software development and STEM generally, and that kind of thing. And number 20, again, like how they could support Africans in STEM generally. And as ever, I'd love to hear your points of view, and sorry if I waffled and stumbled across my words, but I hope I made some interesting points. And as ever, I'd love to hear what points you didn't like and which points you did like, what you agree with or disagree with, and any comments you want to comment, preferably positive. And I am out. Peace and love.